of them may end up becoming believers themselves. Praise the Lord. But some of them will not. And there is going to be plenty of Gentiles and maybe some Jews, but a beast system that is actually hunting down the saints, Gentiles, believing Jews. Well, to have that, you have to have an assassination culture. And apparently, we've now moved into an assassination culture, which I have to ask, is this setting the stage for that violent culture of the tribulation where certain people that hold to certain beliefs and values are hunted? I'm just asking questions. Is the stage being set for what we've been studying about on Sunday nights in the book of Revelation? If you appreciate what we're doing, we need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. And I really urge you to go to worldviewtube.com right now and watch and listen to the full hour and 15 minutes from last night's Worldview class, Bible study, church service on Revelation chapter 14, verse 12. It's so important. Take care.
You are watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem vows to hunt the cowards behind those calls. Quote, under President Trump's leadership, we will not sit idly by as conservative news media and their families are being targeted by false swatting. DHS has the ability to trace phone numbers and track location information, and we will use it to hunt these cowards down. This is an attack, she says, on our law enforcement and innocent families, and we will prosecute it as such. Guy, a frightening turn of events that hopefully does not begin a pattern.
Using this as a weapon is extremely dangerous, and it's evil, and it should be charged basically at the level of a home invasion, I think, right? I believe that when someone falsely accuses someone else of, let's say, sexual assault, if that is proven to be a hoax and false, there should be charges commensurate to what the lie initially was. And in this case, you're putting a lot of people's lives in danger. You are sending armed police, heavily armed police, to the house, believing falsely, because of the lie, that there's some sort of life-threatening moment or incident unfolding in that house or at that property. So they are armed to the teeth, understandably, and the people sitting at home are completely unaware of any of this. They're just innocently trying to go about their lives, even sleeping in bed at night, and to have a door knocked down or pounding it is a terrifying thing, and those who are responsible for swatting others should face extremely serious consequences, because this type of thing will get people killed.
America's domestic terror warfare. Well, welcome back to More War Monday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Fact: swatting is a despicable act of terrorism. Just so we are clear about this fact, here's the definition. Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political, religious, or ideological goals. It typically involves acts intended to create fear, disrupt societies, or coerce governments or populations into meeting certain demands. I'm doing this show, and we'll do more on this subject, because many of the conservatives being swatted in the last few weeks are really just regular but prolific influencer voices for America First. And in these cases are in a circle of friends and colleagues that I'm part of. Most aren't independent media mega superstars, and that tells me the target set is widening for this type of activity and will eventually hit anyone at any time, like your neighbors and mine. That is always who terrorists end up targeting in the end, the average citizen. It's very important that law enforcement get a handle on these attempted murders and acts of domestic terror. I guess if these terrorists were J6ers, they'd already be in jail. But these are on the left, likely part of Antifa terror groups or some others affiliated, and they're probably funded by groups like Indivisible, who you saw in action with the nutty protests over this past weekend. One of those swatting victors is my guest today. He's my friend, Sean George. You know him as Beard Vet on X. He's a Marine Corps veteran and founder of Beard Vet Coffee and an influencer on social media. Sean, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, my friend.
Hi, thanks for having me, Colonel Rob Maness. Pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it, brother. Well, I guess the first question that I have is, has the media just dropped off coverage of this, and is this activity continuing?
Well, yes, and yes, probably to answer both questions. The media, there's very little talk of it. However, the group of us that were the victims of this certain individual or group that's doing these things to us, they're still attacking, and so we're still trying to keep it out in front. Epic Times did a report today that I haven't pushed out yet, but some of my friends have. But we're trying to keep it in the forefront to let everybody know, kind of try to give some updates too, and as to where we're at a little bit with the investigation. But it's extremely important that the FBI and or local police, whoever's investigating each case, and we can get into that. But it's important that they catch these guys to prevent any further swattings and potentially deadly accidents that can happen from the result of swatting.
Yeah. Sean, this stuff's not really new. I mean, we've seen it happen to really big mega influencers like Tim Pool has had it done to him on the air before, Tim Cass. I know Jack Posobiec has, but now they're at our level now. I mean, your right. Accounts on social media are a bit bigger than mine, but I feel like I'm like right at the edge of the circle there. As I said by opening, it's spreading out. But it even happens to people on the left. But what makes this unique, this set of incidents now, from your perspective and the folks that you're talking to that have already been hit?
So there's a couple different routes as to, I guess, potential suspects, so to say. There's a lot of thought process between the group and what our group thinks it is. There's the potential Tesla incident related, trans terrorism could possibly be related, and which is kind of like a slash of Antifa as well. Mm-hmm. It could be some foreign interference as well doing this. However, from some of the research and some of the investigators that I've spoken with, even a private investigator reached out to me recently and was telling me about an incident where a guy was caught back in 2023, was actually prosecuted in 24 for doing some notorious swattings on congressional representatives and senators. And but that guy is caught. He's in jail, apparently. But did not get a very hard sentence at all. I think he got 4 years in prison, which to me seems very, very light, considering what can the potential of the harm that it can cause to the victims of swatting. And that's the hard part I have trying to understand all of this. Like for when it happens, when it happened to me and the others, is that like you, I kind of noticed that, listen, some of these people are in my circles and close friends with these people on social media and outside of social media. So I had the foresight to kind of get a hold of my local sheriff, talk with him. The Friday, it ended up literally being the Friday before the Sunday I was swatted, early Sunday morning at 3 a.m. Okay. And so I had a heads up, and a lot of people don't have that heads up notification. I mean, you saw the video from Owen Schwarrier and I think it was Larry Taunton. I mean, their house was surrounded, had them outside, you know, and if somebody's banging on your door at 3 a.m. in the morning, Rob, you're not thinking clearly like it could possibly be police out there. And the potential for an accident is so great. I mean, and it goes both ways for the law enforcement, for the person who's being swatted, and potentially for the people around the swatting, right? So like you're taking law enforcement off the streets to come to some bogus claim, while somebody may need very serious attention from law enforcement or first responders.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a real shooting that they're having to take people off of, or, you know, something like that, or a severe traffic accident where somebody's life's hanging up by a thread. And, you know, the area needs to be secured, or, I mean, you can just use your imagination, man. And you bring up a good point. You know, Larry Taunton, when you look at his story, from his perspective, he was awake because his German Shepherd was all agitated and he had his gun in his hand. Right. Larry's very lucky to be alive, to be honest with you, because when you look at the videos of that particular incident, I mean, these guys are doing what they're supposed to do. They've got fully automatic rifles out. Their laser, you know, stuff is on. They're coming in, no sound, no lights, you know, and like you said, they had his house surrounded. I mean, if he had turned the lights on internally without being able to tell that those were police officers and had that gun in his hand, he'd be dead.
Right. So a lot of the phone calls have all been, however, we haven't been able to actually listen to them all yet. However, the stories that have been explained to me from law enforcement, that all of our stories are very similar as to what the 911 caller was giving out. So basically the 911 caller was saying he was us, or the individual, and that we wanted to be suicided. There was either suicided by cop, I've killed my family, I'm about to kill my family, I'm down in the basement, you know, heavily armed and full of ammo, and I'm not coming out, all these things. Those were essentially the stories that were put out, and they have this person on 911 the entire time up to the moment where they're at your house. So they're under the impression that they're speaking with you, the person they're swatting, which also leads it to even be in a more deadly situation.
Yeah, because how do, you know, if you're in your house and you decide, hey, I'm going to call 911 because I see this happening. I mean, how do they coordinate that with the SWAT team? You know, timing is everything.
Exactly. And it, you know, it seems like all of our stories, you know, so everybody has been so out of our 16, everybody's been swatted to the point where probably half were very serious situations. The other half had kind of known ahead of time and, you know, either knew local police and things like that to where it smoothed over fairly well. I, on the other hand, I did not release any of my video from our swatting incident, and there's reasons for that I can't really get into technically, but you know, the situation is almost very similar. However, you know, we had security cameras on, and you can really, I mean, it's kind of shocking how stealthy they were to avoid even the cameras. And 7 officers, even though I had my sheriff even put a flag on our 911 to our address for a 911 call. They still took it extremely serious, and they will pretty much forever, every time this happens. And now the signature of this person is that they deliver you pizzas for, well, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end.
Yeah,
So,
I want to get to that in the next segment a little bit. We've got a hand up in the audience. We'll take that at the beginning of the next segment there. But the pizza and some other things I want to ask you if there's been any indicators that you can talk about publicly, because every activity, especially an operation, leaves what we call a breadcrumb trail, and there are always indicators in front of it and during it and behind it that intelligence agencies can pick up and either try to stop the event from happening, disrupt it while it's happening, or track down the criminals or the terrorists in this case before they can do it to somebody else. And I don't really have a good feeling that the last piece is being done very well. So I want to get your take on that, Sean, when we come back from this break. My guest is Sean George, Marine Corps veteran, beard vet is who you know him as. He's one of the 16 swatting victims that's happened recently among influencers that are America first, especially on X. I'll be right back with the Rob Maness Show.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Larry, first of all, I just want to say we're glad that you're okay, but it had to be extremely scary to be the victim of a swatting call. Can you walk us through what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite incredible. It just so happened that I was up. My cameras say that it was at 1:15 a.m. and I was awake. I was in bed. But the reason I was awake is because my German Shepherd Ranger was very agitated and kept looking, around the house. He was sensing something. And so I got up with my gun and I saw what you're seeing right now. I saw, unfortunately, for me, all I could see were silhouettes of people with AR-15s. My cameras have an infrared quality that makes it look like they're more illuminated than they actually were. And this could have been very dangerous.
Could have been, absolutely. The minute you told me you got up, because you're armed, you see bodies floating around outside, you don't know what's happening, and this easily could have gone left.
Yeah, absolutely, because I've never been part of a scenario where police show up at my home, as they would say later, black, meaning they're coming in, they parked up the street, they came in without lights, they came in without sirens, and I look out to see 3 heavily armed men. They're all wearing body armor, and they're carrying AR-15 semi-automatic weapons. And there were a total of 5, because there were 2 more that were on the perimeter of the house. And I think I'm in a fight or flight scenario at first.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking about those acts of domestic terror here on More War Monday. Our show is titled America's Domestic Terror Warfare, being conducted on each other. That was Larry Taunton there describing his experience, which is probably the riskiest description of one of these acts, these recent ones that these men and women have been put through. And my guest today is Beard Vet owner and founder Sean George, a Marine Corps veteran. Sean is one of those folks that's been swatted in this recent grouping of swatting activity. And Sean, as we were talking about before the break, Larry had his gun out. That's what I would be doing. I mean, I keep one handy in a wall safe right next to my bed. It's very easy for me to get to for that very reason. And we're just very, 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 very fortunate nobody's been killed yet in any of this activity. Well, we got a hand up in the audience. We'll go ahead and take that question, but then I want to talk about pizza deliveries. Go ahead, Rob. Patriot Rob is our host over there.
All right, Colonel, we have Joseph. Joseph, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Colonel. My question is kind of simple. As somebody who is involved on X in a lot of different ways, and I won't call myself a real big influencer, what are the things I can do to possibly mitigate something like this from being dangerous? How can I de-escalate this type of activity or prevent it from becoming as difficult as some of these people had it, the situation?
Great question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and who knows what the actual remedy is to the situation besides making it a law that in stiffer laws against swatting. That seems to be about the only remedy to the situation as far as de-escalation when it happens. Yeah, I guess, I answer my door at 3 a.m. the exact same way how the Colonel just mentioned. I'm heavily armed in my home. I have plenty of ammo. I am the type of person who fully would integrate my self-defense laws. And, to not know that the intruder is police, it becomes it just becomes such a dangerous situation for all involved, especially at these times of the hour, in the late mornings. You think your car's being broke into or your home is being broke into and things like that. So it's hard to say what the actual remedy is besides having tougher laws to deter these people from doing what they're doing.
Yeah, you would think that when they catch people doing this, Sean, that they would be charged with at minimum attempted murder on the citizen that they're swatting. But also, I mean, there's a case to be made for attempted murder on the police officer, which is a whole level, next level of punishment if that gets convicted, right?
Yeah, exactly. There is I came across some very good legislation that was proposed in the Idaho legislature just this session. And they're trying to get it passed. I think this is their last week of session up there. I can't remember if it's HR 581. Might be the bill number. But anyways, they're trying to pass it, which has immense, very strong wording, felonies, attempted murder, domestic terrorism. They're saying words like that in their legislation there. And I proposed that. I sent that off to our Nebraska GOP chairwoman to see if she can get it pushed into our legislation while we're in session. And, to no avail, to be honest with you. Not getting much reception from local state senators, legislators, to our federal legislators. I think Representative Clay Higgins down there in Louisiana, he put forth he was going to do some investigation. He put that out there publicly. I think Chip Roy has mentioned something publicly, and Ted Cruz here just recently said something. Other than that, there's been very little attention with our federal delegates, and here locally for me in Nebraska, my state representation. It has been pathetic.
So you haven't had a chance to actually talk with any of your state reps or local councilmen or county commissioners, any of those kind of folks?
No, just basically just my sheriff, who I knew him ahead of time. I will definitely support his reelection if he wants it done, if he wants to run again, or if he has bigger ambitions of maybe possibly running for Congress. That would be wonderful. He's a member of my gun club, so I do talk with him regularly. However, as far as the actual Nebraska GOP, I have sent them off a few things. They seem to be concerned about it. However, the legislators themselves, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what their problem is, to be honest with you. It's hard to neglect something like this when it's a terror, when it definitely is obstructing things in their local community and to their people. It's a danger.
Yeah, it's very surprising. I didn't mention the January 6th response by accident in my opening monologue. I mean, a lot of these, I think even your current congressman has called January 6ers terrorists. I mean, this type of activity is actually something way beyond First Amendment, freedom of assembly, right to have your grievances addressed. That kind of activity is what was going on January 6th. Most of it. I mean, there was some things that we still don't know the answers to, the violence that happened there, including the murder of Ashley Babbitt by a police officer who's never been fully investigated and held accountable. And I hope President Trump will keep his word, and I think he will. He'll have that investigated. But I mean, this is actual attempted murder and an actual acts of domestic terrorism. So you would think that Republicans, especially all over Congress, would be yelling from the rafters with megaphones. And I appreciate Congressman Higgins. He's a law enforcement guy and a veteran too. So, but still, it takes numbers to get this stuff done. So you said you were able to get in touch with the sheriff beforehand because you saw this coming based on what you'd been seeing in the media. If you could talk about it, talk about your experience with this whole situation that hit you for the parts that can be made public and your interaction with folks in law enforcement and the command and control process in the system from the perspective of that your address and name were flagged.
Right. Yeah. So basically what, the day that it happened, the incident happened, which was March 16th. It was a Sunday morning. That same day, the sheriff came, obviously reached back out to me and said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to have the FBI is well aware of what's going on." They set up a meeting for us the following Monday. So literally the first work day of the week, I would gather, and I would assume, the FBI never really truly takes days off. But the following morning on Monday, I had a meeting with the Joint Terrorism Task Force FBI agent out of the Omaha field office, literally come to our house, talk with us about some of the things, talk about which is even better. Like, we were able to talk about the other people who were swatted too, because obviously I'm in close communications with Chad Caton and Gunther Eagleman and Mike Eagleman and a lot of the others, Nick Sorter, so we all were kind of talking about it the day that it happened to me via the phone and text messaging and things like that. So I was able to present a lot of information to the FBI. And as far as I know, I was the first one out of everyone that was contacted by the FBI. And my agent seems to be doing a wonderful job. He's very responsive to all my emails. Anytime us as a group, we've came up with new things and we'll get into the pizza stuff, but pizza things that are related to that, I've sent him every single piece of information that the group has allowed to share, that they're comfortable with me sharing with him. Plus, a lot of people from the group of the victims have reached out to my FBI agent to apply pressure to their field offices to get someone on it. So currently, as it stands, out of the 16, there has been 9 that have been contacted by the Joint Terrorism Task Force or an FBI agent, a local FBI agent, to this day, as of this morning. Because that changed this morning too. So someone was finally contacted today.
Well, it's a big organization. Everybody understands that. There's a lot going on. Everybody understands that too. There's some media stuff about leadership positions, stuff like that going on in the last 48 hours. So that's going on. But at the field level, the field office level, I think there's been direction given by the senior leadership in Washington that, hey, you need to get on this and get this investigated and find these perpetrators. But I know Pam Bondi's pretty aggressive about it and everything. It's
So
very
I can,
interesting. Go ahead.
I can add to that just a little bit too. So as of last week, last Monday, the FBI did inform me that our case is now considered what they call an enterprise case. So when you're talking about coming from the top guys like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who obviously being on X and social media, I've met Kash a couple times over the years. I've met Dan over the years. So I knew that they would have a presence in this case because of not just me, but the other guys tagging those guys in everything that we've been doing. But they did move the case to what is now considered, they called it a specific name, enterprise case. And apparently that is when there's state lines that have been crossed with a group or an organization committing the crimes. So I believe that they think that this is more than just a kid eating, pizza rolls down in his mom's basement. Those are all positive things. And yes, I have 10,000 posts out there bashing the FBI over the past 10 years. So I'm no friend or haven't been a friend of the FBI. However, with different leadership, that changes, just like the presidency, right? I didn't agree with the last president. I agree with this one. So
and the FBI should be apolitical. It wasn't under the last presidency. That's the problem I have with them. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, we'll get to the pizza delivery stuff I promised in the last one, and we got another question from the audience. I'll be right back with Beard Vet, Sean George, Marine Corps veteran, a victim of this recent swatting spate of activity that is really domestic terrorism.
All right, everybody, we are happy.
Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Let's bring in our next guest now, Aaron Durham and Matt Van Swal. They and their 3 children were swatted Sunday morning. Welcome to you both. Matt, please do share with us what happened.
Yeah, so on Sunday morning around 2 a.m., we heard a very loud bang on the door. Aaron ran up and checked out the door. You could see it in that video. And there was a police officer at the door. He was very concerned about us. We learned later that someone had called in a fake 911 call saying that there was a mass shooting at our house, that they were pretending to be me, saying that Aaron had been shot and killed, that I had been shot. There were people in the basement with guns, and to break down the door and come in there, guns blazing. And thankfully, they did not do that. And Aaron answered the door, and they saw her and knew it was fake. But it was could have been a terrible situation.
Aaron, what was that like for you?
My one goal when I saw the officer, his eyes he was so scared and also just ready, So I tried to calm down the situation. I immediately said there are 3 children right above us right now. He immediately got on his walkie-talkie and said, slow down your pace or come in quiet or something like that to everyone that was flying down the road, because we could hear sirens. There were 4 cop cars, 2 ambulances, and a fire truck that were already stationed there, and more coming towards us. So my whole goal was just don't shoot. This isn't real. I'm alive. My husband's walking out right now. He's walking, just trying to repeat. And every time a police officer would come in the house, I would say, we have 3 kids upstairs. We have 3 kids upstairs. Just repeat. To keep everybody calm. And the officers were absolutely amazing.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. We're talking about America's domestic terrorism warfare that's being conducted on our own citizens, more than likely, in large part, by fellow citizens, with John George, the founder of Beard Vet, former Marine veteran, and one of the victims of this recent swatting grouping that's hit conservative America First influencers that are widely known on the X platform and everything. And Sean, before we go to the question, let's talk about the pizza delivery stuff. What is that? I keep hearing everybody that's been involved in this talk about the pizza deliveries. What is going on with that?
So basically, I like to relate it very similar to everybody's seen the movie Home Alone and the Wet Bandits, how they leave their signature mark of turning on the water and flooding the basement of their homes and things like that. Well, this is kind of their signature calling, saying that they did it. So basically, after the swattings, we've been delivered pizzas on multiple occasions. Actually, it's gotten so far out of hand that I'll probably never, ever be able to have a pizza delivered to my home. But they send the pizza. They're able to do like cash on deliveries for pizza, like they pay so it costs them nothing to do this. And it gets to your house and, you've got 5 different pizza guys showing up at your house at all at the same time. But what we discovered is that on some of the receipts, they were leaving little messages, I don't know if they're considered clues or not. I think they're more of, mocking you or mocking us. But they're leaving messages on those, they've mentioned the name Ray Charles Green, who was a famous hacker. They've mentioned Poodle, who was supposedly Ray Charles Green. They've mentioned some other, they've used all of our swatting names on each other's receipts. So like, for instance, like Matt Van Swal, who you just watched the video, him and his wife, Erin, they've had a pizza delivered with Dustin Grage's name on there. And so things like that. But this is, it gets interesting, because now they've started doing this to our family members. They've been sending pizzas to brothers and sisters or anybody essentially with our last names in areas where we grew up, from our hometowns. So they're finding more relatives, terrorizing them. It's not going to stop, so until they catch these guys. And I can say with confidence, I have been told by the FBI themselves that they are working some very good leads in the case. However, because all of us in the group, we all have a little bit of knowledge on how to do a little bit of investigating ourselves, right? I mean, you have Nick Sorter and several others, and Larry Taunton, and some people who know how to do some investigative work on their own. And we've come across quite a few things that are interesting that, I wouldn't say it points us in that direction. However, there's interesting coincidences, if you would call it that.
So, did anybody get a pizza delivered before a swatting out of the blue, or is it all coming afterwards?
It's all coming afterwards. However, I believe Juanita Broderick, she may be the only person who had pizzas delivered beforehand and then was swatted afterward. I think she had 2 pizza deliveries on the same day. She was swatted later that evening. But other than that, all the pizza deliveries have come after the swattings.
That would be a pretty good warning and an indicator, as we would say in the intel world. If you're getting a pizza delivered to you that you haven't ordered from any company, right? It's not just one. It's just not like Domino's or Papa John's, or they're using all of them, right?
Correct. They really seem to like Domino's and Papa John's, though. That seems to be their go-to. However, Pizza Hut, some other places, Little Caesars, because of their app situation online, they allow COD, cash on delivery pizzas. So that's what they look for.
Yeah. Well, we got another question in the audience. Let's go over to the audience. Rob, go ahead.
We have Colonel Burton, sir.
Hey, gents, great discussion. Having now been worried about being swatted for just being and seeing what happened on January 6th, this was very concerning. And also, like, you guys are extremely active, bad-mouthing the government for doing bad things, right? But that seems to be who they're coming after. What I did was I called my sheriff. I gave him my number, and so that if any of this happened, he would call me. Hopefully it goes to the sheriff. But is there, the first guy was talking about it as well, and that is still the question is, what's the best mitigator? And it seems to me is like you have to know your local sheriff. You have to know the deputies. They have to know who you are and then you have to be, look, I'm active. I'm telling people that what has been going on in my country is bad, and there are bad people who are coming after us. So is there some, those TTPs? I would love to hear what your thoughts are on what those TTPs are, tactics, techniques, and procedures to mitigate this. Because like I said, I was worried about an FBI raid for a while just because I was there on January 6th. Now I'm worried about them because I'm still battling the same evil bastards who rigged the election in 2020. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, Sean. I mean, not everybody knows their local sheriff. What's the best pathway to give them a heads up if you're worried, somebody that might be susceptible to it?
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be contacting your local police department, filling them in on the situation, giving them at least the awareness to put the actual flag on your phone number. So that is done through your county dispatch center, 911 dispatch center. So yes, I'm very fortunate in the fact that I was able to contact the sheriff, who then called, got the okay to get my phone number flagged for 911. However, they're still going to send a car out to check on the situation just to make sure that it's legitimate swatting, right? So because they can't completely abandon, this is the bad part of it, they can't completely abandon what they're taught to do and what they have to do. So they're still going to send a squad car out to your residence, check on everything, and make sure there is no serious situation that needs to be attended to. So yes, that may be the best thing, to go to your local county sheriff or your 911 center to give them a little heads up. I don't think it'll hurt anything if you're afraid of that situation, but it does seem to be somewhat connected in this certain instance. I think all of us are connected some way, somehow. I think me personally, I think it revolves around Tesla and trans terrorism. We've all been very highly, poking fun at the trans violence that they're committing. So, and especially to Tesla. So I think those are, I think that's kind of where we're at with that. However, it could be other things. And I sent you over something, and the reason why I'm connecting the dots to the Tesla and Elon Musk incident is all of us have been shared by Elon Musk at some point or sometime, or commented by Elon. And the violence adds up to the same exact timing as this. So the first incident of the swatting was on March the 11th. That was Chase Geiser of InfoWars.
Yeah.
About a couple hours before that, and I sent you the screenshot of that, Rob. But a couple hours before that, there was an Antifa group that was literally putting out directions on how to not have your phone traced and how to start attacking Teslas with another website that was called Doge QUE. So it looks like Doge Quest, but it's .st. Now the FBI has since taken that website down here recently, but also on that website was another website called notrace.how. Now listen, these are Antifa websites. They're probably fully VPN'd and probably have some sort of tracking on there too. So I don't recommend going to them unless you have a very, very good VPN on your system. But this is what they were teaching people on how to commit domestic terrorism. On the website, Rob, you'd never believe this. On the website, so when I looked up the Doge QUE.st was the website. Mm-hmm. When I looked this up, they had doxed Kash Patel's home address on there. They had the list of influential people that own Teslas, Tesla dealerships, and Tesla charging stations all across the country. A map fully easily that anyone can use to go and do some domestic terrorism stuff. So I applaud the FBI for taking that website down. However, the notrace.how is still up. As recently as the other day, I think 2 days ago was the last time I checked it. But I'm in fear, who knows if my VPN is good enough to not track where I am. But they already know where I live. They have my address, so I'm not really all that afraid of it.
Yeah, there's that tweet you were talking about.
Yeah.
That you sent me, notrace.how, folks. Well, we got to take our last break, Sean. When we come back, though, there is a connection from some of the people. We'll hear from Jim Path of the Conservative Caucus Group, which I'm a member of, too. And my guest is Sean George, a beard vet here. We're talking about the domestic terrorism known as swatting. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Swatting is finally being taken care of. The Trump administration is beginning to do something about this. I got a call from my national field director, Chad Caton, just today, who was swatted recently himself. It has been well more than a dozen, maybe up to 24 people who are having the SWAT team show up and potentially could get killed in the confrontation. 3 of those people are connected with the Conservative Caucus, and it really ticks me off. The amount of the absurd anger, violence, an approach of destroying Republicans and supporters of Donald Trump that Democrats are undertaking, it's one of the worst episodes in American history of utilizing violence and intimidation to stop politics. Now, it's not working. The American people are not accepting it. But in the meantime, I've got 3 people connected with my organization who might have gotten killed in serious SWAT raids. These Democrats are fascist, violent people who will not stand for your liberties. They want to destroy everything that you hold dear. They want to control your life, and they've got to be stopped.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. That was Jim Pfaff, the leader of the Conservative Caucus Group. He was talking about the members of his group that have been swatted in this latest round of swattings that have targeted conservative, America First type influencers, most of them on the X platform. And my guest today is Sean George, Beard vet, Marine Corps veteran, and one of the victims in this. Sean, you already kind of touched on it a little bit. There's some connections amongst the group that go even further than what Pfaff was talking about there with the Conservative Caucus, that looks like, and that Musk might have either replied to or retweeted a lot of folks that are in this particular group, and that leads to the Tesla, Antifa, trans type of activity, which are known terrorists. I mean, I don't care what the media refuses to call them, or the old FBI, they are terrorists, no matter which way you cut that cake. And we've got a question over in the audience. When we come back from that, though, I want to add, my question is about how do you think they got your information, and how are they getting family members' information? That's because some of the family members have actually been swatted. Let's go over to the audience and take that question real quick. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I actually have a question, Colonel, and Sean. So you said earlier in the program that you had a flag on your number with your local police department. Did you know beforehand, or was this something that was like done before? And was this after the swattings, or did you just have an inclination that it might actually happen?
I did not have the flag on my phone number until the Monday following the swatting. However, I did contact my sheriff the Friday before, on the 14th. I had contacted him because 2 of my buddies were swatted that evening. So Gunther Eagleman and Mike Engelman were both swatted on the 14th, if I remember correctly, or the morning of the 14th. So I reached out to him and I kind of filled him in on some of the details of what was going on with some conservative influencers that I was close with and associate with. So I did give him a heads up. However, it wasn't flagged until after the incident, until the following Monday. So when that did take effect, but luckily I haven't been re-swatted again, or at least I don't have knowledge of another attempted swatting.
So how did that go down, Sean, since the sheriff kind of already knew about you? Was that helpful that you were able to do that beforehand, or did it matter? How did it go down when they came out there?
Yeah, no, it was very helpful. They were aware, that it could potentially be fake. However, at 3:00 in the morning, I'm being shot out of a cannon. It felt like, so I'm out of it, and on a Friday, the day before my birthday. So I actually had a birthday celebration the night before. So it was, kind of just, listen, it's overall very scary situation, especially when your loved one, she has no idea what's going on. I did explain to her, a little bit beforehand that it could happen, but I really didn't. Honestly, I didn't think they would come after, as I believe, little old me. I didn't think I would be hit like that. I really didn't. The other guys had to follow.
My teenage grandsons were visiting us that week for a week, along with their mom and dad. So I had to brief them up, but I didn't didn't make any calls because I was still wasn't convinced that as to what was going on. But that's probably the best approach, is to call your local law enforcement, whoever has the dispatch, and have your number flagged. Now, there are more cell phones in the house, in my case, than just mine. Do they want all the cell phones in the home, or that kind of information? Or
so we did give them that information just in case. But yeah, and as far as them finding our family members or how they found me, I've been very public about who I am, and I did try it several times of just putting my name and my hometown in there, and sure enough, it pops right up, so it took about 2 seconds of real hard looking into of where addresses are found of people who could either go by their identity, or obviously a business, and people can look at the business and track who the business and where the business started and came from and all that. Yeah, I didn't think I was that easy of a target. However, I'm going to be more cognizant of it now.
yeah, so how do they get to the family members?
Great question. I believe that they're possibly using Facebook links and things like that, because you may follow somebody or you may have a private Facebook account. However, there's somebody that has tagged you in a Facebook, which is a little more family oriented, right? I don't use Facebook very often, but my entire family uses Facebook. So there's connections of Sean was here over the weekend or whatnot, and can just correlate fairly easy about who someone is and where they're at. So I'm gathering it was Facebook more than any other apparatus that they were probably using to connect dots with family members.
Okay. We got one more question, and we have time for it from the audience. Let's go ahead and take that, Rob.
Corey, go ahead.
Thank you, Rob. I was more or less wondering. I hate to call it this, but it's a weird. I've just been sitting here pondering and thinking about it. Could this be considered a cold civil war? As far as when we look at the Cold War, when they would do certain types of aggression, whether it was electronically, throughout electronic warfare, or even more with lawfare, because you got to think about it, that they are calling the police to your house, and all of us, we're armed, and we're going to protect our home. And I think they're playing off that. Would it be considered something like that? I hate to call it that, but it's just been on my mind.
Good question.
Yeah. No. Well, again, it's the acts that they're doing that probably constitute something towards that direction. Weaker people tend to do cowardly things. And I believe the swatting incident is a total cowardly act, especially endangering the lives of young children, your neighbors who are innocent victims as well. There's so many things that can just go wrong in a certain situation. So yeah, these cowardly domestic terrorists, sure, it's probably similar to like starting a civil war, because they are acts. Their political actions is what they're doing. Their political violence that I believe that they're instituting in on us, and it can happen to anyone. This can be anyone. It doesn't have to be somebody who's got a large follower account on social media. You say one wrong thing to a person online, and this is their cowardly act. They can do right on back to you.
Yeah, and I would just add my answer to Corey's question. Look, I think it's beyond the Cold Civil War. This right here is the line. This type of activity is intended to intimidate and create violence on their enemies, and it's the political aspect of it that generates my answer to that in the affirmative. Lawfare, that kind of stuff. Protesting peacefully, that kind of stuff. That's all part of the effort, to get your point across, get your message out. But this right here, this is the line in the sand. That's why I said in my opening, Sean, that eventually this will break out. If we don't stop it, it will break out to all citizens, and nobody will be able to get it under control then, because folks will take up arms and protect their families and their property and themselves. Fortunately and unfortunately, this is still America, and we still have the Second Amendment, and we can never give it up. And this is a glaring reason why. So, what's your message to the folks that are doing this to you, as a closing comment, and tell folks where they can find you?
Well, I don't think they really want to hear what I really want to say to their face. However, I know and you know that the federal government does have the capabilities of tracking phone calls anywhere in this entire country, especially if they're sending phone calls over to foreign seas. Those communications are 100% picked up. If they can pick up any communications like that, there's 100% no doubt in my mind, and I know this, that our military intelligence can pick up any one of these phone calls. And if those resources are not allowed to our FBI, which I find hard to believe, then we need to start taking this, like you said, the concern needs to be taken more about doing something about that. And I don't want the FBI listening on every one of our conversations, because it does violate our Fourth Amendment right. However, they've been doing that for quite some time now. And especially in a case, they should let us all know that there's FISA warrant or CISA warrant or something that they put out there on our communications, so that they pick up and track these devices that they're using and find out where they're coming from. So I hope these people, I hope they're heavily armed to the gills for when the police show up at their door and arrest them. And God have mercy on them, because I want the full book thrown at them. And if they own anything, me and the guys and the gals that were victims of this, we want it. Even if it's a 92 Honda Accord, I want it, and I want to own it.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you very much, Sean, for coming on today and talking about this. We'll do more shows on this in the coming weeks, because I want to keep putting it out there and getting it in front, because it's still happening. People are getting pizzas delivered to them, is what's going on. Tomorrow, though, on Training Tuesday, Dr. James Lindsay, and if you're interested in him, we're going to be talking about the woke right. There's been a lot of stuff going on with his discussion and trying to educate people about the woke right. And I have some questions. And I've had James on my show before. It's going to be a great show. And I'm sure that he's going to say something that's going to piss somebody off, because that's what he does. And that's the right thing to do, because we have to understand what's happening with wokeism, whether it's on the left or the right. I'll see you then.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House. You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.